Welcome to Arvid and Tyler Catch Up. I'm Arvid.
I'm Tyler. Let's catch up.
That's right. Yeah, let's catch up. How's your week been? I think we've been missing yet another week, or I always phrase this in a negative way. I think we just decided to give ourselves one more week between
Hmm.
episodes, right? To accumulate interesting things to talk about. How about that? Is that the better
Yeah,
way of
it's been
phrasing
two
it?
weeks.
That's
Judgment free,
That's
just
right.
facts.
It is now 2 weeks later. I'm still glad we're still doing this because I think this is episode number 12, if I'm
Yeah.
not completely wrong. And I think that
Hmm.
was the amount of conversations that we initially kind of committed to. Right. That's what I remember. So I'm
Yeah.
glad we made it here, and I hope we'll make it way further than this in the
Yeah.
future. But already being here is so cool. How have your last 2 weeks been?
They've been good. They've been good. Yeah, really busy in a good way. I think if folks have been listening from the beginning, they know that my day job running the Calm Company Fund has been kind of all over the place the past couple of months in terms of just a lot of work and decisions and stuff that is not the core business of just meeting with founders and investing with them and then helping out the portfolio companies the best I can. And these past 2 weeks, more or less the last kind of 5 to 6 weeks, have really been almost entirely that, which has been great. So I've been spending a lot of time just reviewing companies to invest in, meeting with some, actually writing a couple checks, which is great. We've got new companies joining the portfolio imminently, or rather already closed. So they're in the process of being onboarded and all that sort of stuff. And keeping the LPs up to speed and all that kind of stuff, which has been really good. It's been kind of interesting to see some of the conversations with founders have um, surfaced an interesting kind of conundrum right now, which is for folks who are not that plugged into the investing world right now, there's been this really dramatic change in that world over the last kind of 6 months or so, which is we transitioned from this period where there was just lots of capital out there. Valuations were kind of crazy. Everybody was able to founders were able to sort of raise money and access capital markets in a way that almost felt like a no-brainer. You say, okay, I want some money, whether it's equity or debt or whatever, and the terms were such that it was like you didn't really feel like you were giving up hardly anything, right? So you go like, sure, I'll
Mhm.
take some money. And now we're entering this phase because interest rates are rising and capital is less available, that it's kind of coming to more of a normal thing where when you want money from investors in some format, you kind of have to give something up. You have to want it. You have to feel like there's a trade happening here. And that's fine if you're coming in fresh, whatever, you don't know. But what's happening is there's founders who sort of have gone across that time period, are having a really difficult time kind of switching gears, right? It's almost like you got this car that's going in sixth gear and you're going super fast and you got to downshift to second gear. And it's just really hard to do that. So I'm having a lot of conversations with founders where they've built a great company. They built a cool SaaS business. It's got, let's say 30K in MRR, but, and it's growing and I'm really excited about it. But, a bunch of angels got excited like 14 months ago and they've raised like $1.5 million. So their
Hmm.
burn rate is like 125K a month relative to the 30K. So like, even though they've got this business and it's growing, they just have way too much staff. And so now they're trying to do the sequential thing, right? Okay, you raise 1.5 million, now you got to go raise three or four, and there's no market for them to raise three or four. And so I'm kind of having these tough conversations with them where it's like, probably you're going to have to bite the bullet and normalize your burn rate, which probably means like laying off half the people that you just hired in the last 9 months. It's super hard to swallow that kind of a change so
Hmm.
early on in the business cycle. So it's like, you know it's just a very difficult thing to navigate as a founder, and I'm having a lot of those conversations, trying to very delicately help these founders navigate these tough decisions. So yeah, it's an interesting market right now for sure.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
what about you?
wonder.
Yeah.
Well, let me respond to this first because I really wonder something. I had a couple of conversations over the last weeks, mostly about mental health and
Yeah.
expectations. Right, I was talking to Dr. Julie Gerner, who's on the podcast today that I released about imposter
Oh,
syndrome
awesome.
and those kind of
Great.
things. Yeah, she's awesome, and
Yeah.
she just got like to 100,000 Twitter followers as well. I love the fact that there's somebody who works effectively as a psychologist, like helping people
Mm.
understand mental health issues, and they have like a six-figure Twitter following. That is what we need in our community. So talk to her and about a lot of the self preservation things that people do, projection things that we do. Even she said imposter syndrome is something that not everybody has. Some people think they have it, but it's really just like depression, or it's something that is like a self kind
Sure.
of analyzing, where it's really just your own unwillingness to deal with your parts of your psyche that you haven't yet explored, right? And your
Mm.
projection of other people's capacity into your own life. There's a lot going on with imposter syndrome. So I had a lot of conversations with her about this, and I feel founders that have nobody to talk to, they often struggle with even the most basic things because they have
Yeah.
nobody to really understand, just to kind of bounce this back and forth with, to understand themselves with or through. And the week prior, or I guess next week when it's being released, I talked to Paul Millard, who we've mentioned many times on the podcast, and
Sure.
we talked about also with VC funding and the kind of this hamster wheel of having to raise round after round. That is
Yeah.
effectively a narrative. That's kind of common knowledge. He calls it like common knowledge, which is us thinking that we know what other people know. That's what common knowledge
Mm.
is to him, right? Our expectation that something is known by other people's ideas. That's kind of the larger term. And I feel
Hmm.
in particular around the successful startup founder, being able to sustain the choices that you make from the start is part of your identity of success, right? Hiring people and
Mm.
not letting them go, success. Hiring people and
Mm.
having to let them go, massive failure. Even though the business is still
Mm.
around, right? But in our minds, and I'm kind of putting them together. And I do wonder, what kind of responses do you experience when you talk to people about that being a necessity? Like, how do people react? If you can divulge that, obviously.
Yeah, generally, I think you're right that there is a very strong intuitive need to stick to the narrative of success. And it's really hard to stray from that, even though, you know, you're right that like there's no rules that say you have to follow this particular thing. There are many different ways to success. And actually, if you go and start to reverse engineer a bunch of different folks' pathways to success, you often find that it didn't follow this, totally smooth kind of just like success compounding on success, compounding on
Hmm.
success. There's often the sort of valley of despair or whatever, the trough of disillusionment, whatever
Yeah.
you call it. Like a lot of this stuff often happens, but it's very hard to reckon with it. And I guess what I am finding pretty frequently is just that there's a sort of it's just difficult to grapple with it, and there's a little bit of kicking the can down the road, right? Sort of a perspective of, okay, well, we still have a good amount of runway to keep working on this, et cetera, et cetera, and so I think that it's going to have to get closer to kind of the day of reckoning, right? Before folks
Yeah.
really start to just say, okay, I have to actually grapple with this question. Because if you can sort of just hold out hope, there's a very, very, very strong incentive to do that. And I think that's compounded a lot by, you see like something that I kind of will often chime in on when I see it on Twitter or something like that. Somebody will share some story of like, Jeff Bezos pitched 300, investors before he got his first yes. So like, hashtag just keep going or something like that. And I often will pipe in and say like, the reality is that like most of the time, you get to like 299 no's, you have like a no,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
you probably should have actually stopped at maybe like 107 no's. That was probably like enough, and so there's just this like real, a complementary narrative to what you're talking about of the idea of just like brutal, just don't accept any other outcome kind of persistence that we really sort of valorize entrepreneurs for
Mhm.
having. And that is one that I think folks are picking up in this moment right now, which is like, that's going to be me, right? I understand everything you're saying, but I'm going to be the one that gets 300 no's and gets the 301st yes, so that I, don't have to rationalize the business in this moment. And it's very hard to to try and take that away from someone, right? And to some extent, that's not my responsibility. Like these founders have to make their own choices, and I'm not in charge, so I just kind of am trying to advise them as best as I can about what probably makes sense, and then they're going to have to navigate this kind of weird environment as best they can.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense.
What's
It
up with
does.
you?
Well, I've been having a fun time. I'm preparing for my parents to arrive here in Canada. My German parents,
Hey,
who speak not a word of English. It's gonna be the most hilarious time that I
the
ever
call
had
come
with
to Canada.
the calls are coming. Yeah, it's really, really the Germans are here. That's how it's gonna be. It's gonna be fun because like with Danielle's family, that's quite sizable. There's so many people. They all are really, really looking forward to meeting them. But
Hmm.
between us and like between them and the Germans, there's gonna be a lot of translation layer that has to constantly happen. So both Danielle and I are gonna be the translators for a good week and a half. Mostly me, I guess, because I'm gonna stick with them all, the whole time. Danielle has other things to do, living a
Isn't
busy
there an
life.
AI
So
for this now? Can't you just give them
you know
some
what?
sort of?
This reminds me, and this is another story that involves Danielle because most of the good stories in my life involve my partner. With her, as we built Feedback Panda, right, the
Mm.
business that we then sold to the wonderful people at the company that you sold your business to as well. As we built this, we went to a conference in China. We went to at like an online teaching summit that was really really cool, hosted by one of the companies that we actually integrated into our product. So that was a big deal. I think it was called GET, Global Education Technology Summit. So we flew to China. We flew to Beijing, and it was my first time in China ever. I never thought I would go there. Like getting a visa and all that was interesting, and arriving there was interesting, and seeing China was it was a lot of interesting stuff. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So we went to a hotel, and the conference was in there too. But they had organized something for a couple people that came there, and like an additional little visit to Beijing, visit to companies in Beijing. So we
Okay.
went to all kinds of like education technology companies and AI technology companies. That was 28 7 7 or 18. So it
Okay.
was like before the big AI push in the West. We went to, I think, iFlight Tech or something was the name of that company in China, and they were literally presenting that device that you just said. They just like
Mm.
held it up, speak into it in any language, and it will come out English. And we did, and it did. It was bizarre. Like
Mm.
the technology you think does not exist, it exists,
Yeah.
and it's somewhere in a Chinese lab that they actually make it happen. So it was really cool. They showed us like the stuff that now scares us, looking at the privacy perspective of it, because this thing probably also detects everything being said in the room and automatically translates it into some database. And in
Hmm.
China, everything you say kind of has an impact on what you're allowed to do. There was
Mm.
one company that we went to. There was a school, like a teaching company, that had like a camera essentially set up at everybody, pointing at everybody, and they would read obviously your face recognition kind of stuff. But it wasn't only recognizing your face; it was recognizing your mood, and it would put a score on top of your face, telling people that just how happy you are where you are right now, if you're sad, if you're confused, if you understood the
Mm.
things that people told you just now, or if you need more help. That's the
Hmm.
idea, right? And so you point it at a class of 30 kids, and you get a little score, like a percentage in green or red on top of every kid's head, telling you about the thing you just tried to teach them, if they got it or not. And
Yeah.
from privacy perspective, this is horrible because it kind of infringes into your own internal world that you sometimes externalize through your face.
Yeah.
But it is technology that exists, and in a country like this, it will be used for many, many different purposes. That's as far
Yeah.
as I'll go. Right? It was just an interesting glimpse into the technology as it is being built in a country that we don't really get that much information from. That also
Mm.
impacts a lot of things that we do, right? Because most of our stuff is produced here too. So that being
Yeah.
said, I don't have that device. My capacity to translate between German and English will have to suffice for the visit of my parents here. But we're gonna have a
I
great
think
time.
there are some pretty good ones out though. I've seen some launches and stuff.
Mhm.
You should like do a little outreach to some of the, even if they're still in beta, right? I think that would
Yeah,
be
it's a
like
good
great
idea.
content, like
That
your
is fun,
family
yeah.
and Danielle's family just like
Hmm.
beta testing some,
Just like both
omni
looking at iPads.
translation AI. Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be really cool.
I mean, that would actually be really cool. I'm gonna
Yeah.
spend a couple hours before they come. Thanks for that suggestion. I thought we could handle it, but why not also make it fun, right? Why
Yeah.
not involve
Try it out.
technology? Well, the thing is, and I've been preparing for this, obviously, right? But with people coming from the other side of the Atlantic, I needed to make a couple of preparations, and that's what most of the last 2 weeks have been for me. I've been
Wow.
trying to kind of ramp up the production of what I do, my writing and my recording and my editing, so
Yeah.
I would be able to spend 10 days with my family, going to Toronto. We want to see the big city, right? Because we live in the countryside, a couple hours away from it. They're going to
Yeah.
land in Toronto. We're going to spend some time in Toronto. Then we're going to go to Niagara Falls, the Canadian side, because there is some family history that almost happened there. Like it's there's a lot going on. But we wanted to see the falls. We want to spend some vacation time there, and then we're
Yeah.
going to do the whole family. We're going to bring them here to the countryside and have. I think there's a pork roast involved somewhere. Yeah, like a half a pig or something, and it's gonna be like 50 people, and they're gonna be so confused. I'm already looking forward to that a lot. It's
Sounds like
like
a
they get
glorious disaster.
that was my first experience. I got kind of married into a super huge family, just a lot of people, a lot of wonderful, every single one of them, amazing people, and I got
Mhm.
to meet almost all of them on my first day that I ever came to Canada. That's the experience that my family will also get, and I'm kind of happy about this,
Yeah.
because it's just a different world. But yeah, I've been recording a lot, I've been writing a lot. Just earlier today, I finished editing the episode with Paul Millard, because that's the one
Yeah.
that's going to go out next week while I'm not even home. Just preparing everything, scheduling everything, getting my sponsors on board. There's a lot of stuff to do if you are not on your regular schedule. So that's
What
what I
does that
spend
look
most
like
of my
for
time in.
you? Like for if you need to get 2 weeks ahead all of a sudden, like what does that week look like for you? I mean, do you just have to work a lot? I mean, how much flexibility is there in your your current sort of schedule? I'm actually
Uh,
curious.
it's
How
like
big
we
of a
should
challenge?
talk about this a bit more extensively at a
Yeah,
later
yeah,
point in the episode. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's a good question, because I only can tell you really in retrospect now, because I didn't really have much of a plan for it. My plan that I have on every single week that hasn't changed really is: on a Monday I write, on a Tuesday I kind of write if I still need to. On Wednesday I do this with you, I have this conversation, and I pre edit or prefix certain things for my recording, which is on Thursday, and Friday is the day that I just push it all out. And that
Yep.
order of write, random stuff, record, market, that is my 5 days a week that I always
Okay.
have every single week. And what I
Yep.
did this week was really just do twice as much every single day. And the way I did this was by reducing my YouTube consumption by 50%. That's really what that was. Because I tend to watch a lot of stuff just on the side while I think, while I allow my brain to just pull in things. And this time
Mm.
it was like, no, I'm actually going to write this one article that I really want to write. And then the other one needs also to happen today, but I can, get an hour of just mental relaxation in there, but not 2 hours as I usually would. So that's kind of how
Mhm.
that happened, and kind of extended into the evenings too. With
Okay.
Danielle being, doing her sound engineering stuff, she often works like late at night as well, or just does
Yeah.
works on projects. We both sit in here. She sits like over there, and I sit here. We both type away. The little puppies at our feet. It's a little family workation in our office here. But I just did twice as much on any given day. So I didn't shift anything around because I don't want to.
Yeah.
Minus the actual recording and editing of this week, because tomorrow I'm gonna be in Toronto for a little conference thing. But
Mm.
usually I would have done the recording of everything tomorrow just as regular, just to do twice as much. That's how I work. I need my structure, and the moment I shift like my general structure, and in that I can be flexible. But I don't
Mm.
want to be flexible with the structure, because I know that my brain is just gonna be. It's just, if it's Tuesday and I haven't been writing, then that's kind of how I feel. It kind of irritates me. So I've developed this over the last couple of years. I never had that before. Yeah, how is that
Mm.
for you? Like, how structured is your life, your business life, I guess?
I would say pretty unstructured in that kind of way. Like, I don't have a lot of like on Mondays I do X, on Tuesdays I do Y, sort of thing. I think,
Hmm?
I guess the main thing I do is I try to avoid having meetings on Mondays and Fridays to try
Okay.
and infiltrate those. So like my Calendly will pretty much always block those out, so that at least I have kind of more unstructured days, or at least uncalendared days, on
Hmm.
Mondays and Fridays. But otherwise, historically, I've really not had much structure to that. I tend to just kind of do a mix of, a lot of stuff is fairly time sensitive, right? So if we're working on closing a new investment, or all of a sudden something pops up in the portfolio that, you know companies trying to raise another round, or they need advice on something, or they have an acquisition offer that they need an opinion on, evaluating, these kinds of things I have like no real control over. They just
Hmm.
come inbound. And so, keeping some flexibility there to be able to kind of react to those, and have time to respond to those, is pretty
Hmm.
important. And then with like larger projects, I tend to really just try to follow the things that I have like real passion for, and let that kind of flow. So, if I'm feeling like I really have the itch to work on a writing project, or put out a blog post, or, do some sort of long tweet thread or something like that, I'll just follow that. And if
Hmm.
it's more like it's time to do some, maybe less company specific, but more just like market research. Maybe it would be like digging into AI and looking at what's going on there, or thinking about, what's going on in the venture world, or these sorts of things. Then I'll just kind of follow those threads. But yeah, I'm not, I don't have a week to week structure. I am trying to work out a little bit more of like a quarterly, or almost, I'm thinking more of like an every 6 weeks sort of flow, where I have a bit more rotation there. But it's, kind of a mix of both, like not a great fit for me personally, and not a great fit
Hmm.
for the market that I'm operating in, right? Because it's like, oh, like we're only going to review companies on these 2 weeks, but then like some amazing company comes through the door. You don't want to say, hey, we'll get back to you in 6 weeks, kind of thing. So,
So
um,
kind of
yeah,
keeping your options open by not like predetermining specific days or weeks or months.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think
Interesting.
so. Because I just don't control when those interesting work opportunities kind of come on my plate, right?
Hmm.
It's better to be, at least I think it's better to be responsive to those.
Hmm. It sounds like you have a lot of things to be responsive to. Like, would
Yeah,
you say like I do wonder because most of the stuff that I do is really just like being active on Twitter. I mean, there could be things there that should be responsive to, but they are like non-critical. Like somebody sends
yeah,
me a DM offering me something or wanting
hmm,
to do something for or with me, great. But if I don't reply within an hour, it's still going to be there.
right,
Looks like for you that might be different. Like how much
yeah.
of the stuff that you do is like both urgent and important if you put it into the
A
Eisenhower
lot of
matrix
it.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. Um, I would say like a high degree of urgency. Depending, I mean, urgent is a sort of, extreme word, but time sensitive for sure. Yeah.
Mhm.
Most stuff is time sensitive. Yeah.
Is that just the nature of the beast, or is that something that you could, if you really wanted to, like delegate or delay or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so investing is pretty time sensitive. That's the nature of the beast, right? You usually don't have a sort of open-ended window in which to invest in a company.
Hmm.
Um, there's kind of this general sense of a round is happening, or just the company's at a moment where they want to fundraise, and then, they're either going to have raised the money or decided not to in, a month or so, and they might not be there. So there's that element. Helping portfolio companies with stuff is also pretty time sensitive, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff is, hey, we need to hire someone, we need to make this kind of critical business decision. Kind of is pretty time sensitive most of the time. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
I'm asking this mostly because it's very opposite from the things that I operate on as a writer.
Sure.
Like the only thing that is time sensitive for me, and even that is really not that time sensitive, is that I send my newsletter where
Right.
other people have sponsored stuff in there so they can, get their money's worth in terms of exposure to my audience. But it doesn't matter if I send it at 9:05 or 9:15 or if I forget at 11 maybe or maybe the night before because I click send instead of schedule. Nobody really cares, right? And this has all happened. So the criticality doesn't is not in time, it's more in to do it at all at some point.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of like just sort of inbound email with folks, readers or something like that, kind of asking you for questions or advice or something that would,
Yeah.
like not like just like practical stuff. Hey, can I get a discount or, whatever? I want a refund, that kind of stuff. Like real, like, hey, I want your advice on my startup, that sort of thing. Do you get that kind of stuff?
Oh, I get it all the time. I get it
Yeah.
like mostly through Twitter because I tell people wherever I go, my Twitter DMs are open if you have a question and I will get to it. And I do get to it. Most
Yeah.
of the time, if I follow them, they follow me. I get to it almost immediately because that's just, uh, I can't see the DM, little notification thing without clicking on it. And then it either is like a couple minutes of me typing or I record a little video and post it in there because that's easier for
Hmm.
me. I turn on my lights, turn on the little button that I have on my Stream Deck here, and then it records so I can just post it. That makes responses very easy because I could just ramble on for like 10 minutes and it's awesome. Don't have to type. It's spectacular. I highly recommend having a one button only recording set up for yourself because that just makes async but visual
Mm.
audio visual communication super easy. So yes,
What
I
does
get a
it
lot of that.
record to? What do you
So
record to?
I record
You
through
record.
OBS just on my computer, upload to YouTube, and then I give people the unlisted YouTube link.
Oh, okay. That's pretty
It's
good.
very simple. Like it could probably build something where once it's done on OBS, it automatically uploads and it copy and pastes the link into my clipboard. I don't even have that, but I could do that. I don't. I just, that's one more step where I can, write something nice, a nice little personal message for people. But yeah, I do that. And if the video is short, I upload it straight into Twitter, into the DM as an
Mm.
integrated video. But the moment it's like a 500 gigabyte worth of a nice, resolution kind of video, YouTube tends to be the better place to do it.
Mm.
So I do this a lot. I do the same in emails. People send me an email, I respond to the email. So I get a lot of those. I get a lot of like um semi cold emails, like cold emails that are also questions. It's like, hey, we have this product, wonder if you would be interested, and if so, sure, here's the link to get your free account or whatever.
Mm.
And another thing, because we've been reading your blog or we've been listening to your podcast, we're dealing with this pricing issue right now. What should we do? What
Mm.
would you pay? Right? It kind of meanders into each other. I tend to respond to every single thing that is not just a cold email trying to sell me your weird SEO stuff. Like I spend
How do you, yeah. How do
spend a
you
lot of time with that.
prioritize that? Where does that fit into your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday
I
protocol?
I tend to scan my email every 2 hours or so just for
Mm.
new things. And the moment I see something that I definitely don't want to respond to, I just mark it seen and it's gone. Or
Mm.
I use hey.com, so I filter it out immediately if it's somebody reaching out to me for the first time, like they are blocked for life. That's
Mhm.
just not because I don't want good offers for something, but if I get like one of these, these templated cold emails, hello first name kind of stuff, it's just
Yeah.
not gonna happen. So
Yeah.
I don't like that, and I don't want that. But I
Mm.
I just I tend to, I use the other feature that Hey has, which is what is it called, Bubble Up. Have you used that or have you seen it before? It's kind of the email kind of
Yeah.
vanishes for a couple hours and it comes back at 6 p.m. Or if you do it late in the day, late in the evening, it comes up the next morning at 8. So the
Okay.
the idea is that this email is interesting enough for me to eventually respond. I just don't want to deal with it right now. Push it
Yeah.
towards tomorrow. I have a couple of emails in my bubble up that I've been bubbling up for a couple of weeks at this point. It's just stuff that's not critical, but I kind of want to deal with it. Hey also
Yeah.
has this surprise me feature, so it will come back at a random point. So it's really cute. Like they've built a nice little email client here, and
Mm.
I have this more as a to-do list than anything else. These emails and
Yeah.
anything like once a week or so, I just go through all my emails because I get a lot of them, a lot of
Yeah.
transactional ones as well. Like your day on Twitter, here are the best tweets, that kind of stuff. I get that from Black Magic or what else? I get I use Siften
Yeah.
YFTEN, right?
Mhm.
To highlight things where my name or my products are mentioned. So that comes
Yeah.
in every day or whenever something happens. So I respond to those. I'm working with the guy who helps me write the book proposal. So all the
Sure.
emails that person is writing, they come back to me immediately, and I try to interact with that. There's a lot going on, but
Yeah.
prioritizing is every now and then I check, and if it's interesting, I do it right now, or I bubble it up for the next day.
Mm. Nice. I like the video suggestion is a good one. I think this is
Hmm.
not exactly like on topic here, but I've recently just been recognizing that like I actually get just legitimately too many emails
Yeah.
where like the questions are just kind of hard. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, I want advice on my startup, or should we be, fundraising or something like that? And it's like I have to read the deck, and I started timing these things, and each individual email was taking me like 40 minutes
Yeah.
to review the relevant material and respond to it, and I'm getting like 15 plus a day of these, and it's just like, okay,
Yeah.
this is actually like not a sustainable system here.
Yeah.
Like, I
No,
don't
definitely
really know
not.
what to do. That's interesting.
Well,
The video
well,
response, I think, might speed it up. That's cool. Yeah.
I've been doing these Twitter teardowns for the last couple of weeks, right? That's my new
Mm-hmm.
big thing that I've been doing. And it's been quite enjoyable. And that's really nothing else than me opening up somebody's Twitter profile on this monitor over here, pressing the screen capture button on my Stream Deck, my Elgato Stream Deck, not sponsored, but should be, right? But that I use to switch between scenes and OBS because I did one live stream once and I set up a whole thing for it. Maybe a bit of overkill, but it's really useful now because I can just put my little face in the corner like you would have on a Loom, but I stream it as a high quality recording to my local hard disk or something, and then I record myself going through their profile in like 15 minutes. That's the idea,
Yeah.
right? That's what I sell, like a 15-minute thing for $100, and you get it a couple days after you sign up for it or you pay
Okay.
for it. That's kind of the idea. After
It's
our
pretty cheap.
conversation today, yeah, it is pretty cheap, but it's also a lot of fun. So I think we both get something out of it, and it has purchasing power parity pricing too. So some people get it even cheaper. People from India or Afghanistan or other places, right, where there's a discrepancy. Anyhow, what I'm saying is, and that's maybe something I would recommend to you, in the sense, like if you do video, you can do like the reading and going through the material at the same time as the response, right? You don't need to read through it and then start typing. You can literally read through it in a capture as you capture yourself, your little face in the corner, and the rest is on your screen, and you can mark stuff, you can highlight stuff, right, for the person to see you intellectually engage the work. I think that's what people really enjoy about the teardowns that I'm doing, because I click on stuff and I say, what is this? Like from the perspective of somebody who goes to somebody's Twitter profile for the first time. And then I click around and I try to understand what it is. Most of the time it's their link that they have in their bio or their header image. I try to inspect it and figure out what it means. And I think that gives people a clue as to like how confusing their Twitter profile can be by somebody who just doesn't know what to do with it. And that is so clearly conveyable if you do it as a video. It's harder to describe this in text. So yeah, I would maybe install Loom, get the Loom professional plan or something. Is I don't know, $20 a month or so, and it's just a little recording button, and you got it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I recommend it.
Okay.
It's really easy and shareable. It's nice. And transcripts. Like that's the other thing, because I built a little Apple script here for myself, because I'm into AI stuff a little bit, like just experimenting with it locally, and I use Whisper, OpenAI's Whisper, which is their audio to text conversion tool, and I found, like, I think it's called Whisper CPP, which is the CPU bound version that works even if you don't have a good graphics card. It uses the CPU, and apparently it does a minute of audio in like 10 seconds or so of computing time. Just turn it into a transcript. So I built an Apple script that will automatically pull up or instruct the computer to generate a transcript for any given audio file or movie file, doesn't matter. So that whenever the video is done recording, I just right click on it, say run Whisper, and it automatically generates the subtitle, which all of a sudden makes the whole thing searchable, which is, it's kind of like it if you wrote an email just by narrating it into the computer. So now you have the audio, you have the visual, and you have a text version of the thing you were saying. If you were writing an email, it would take you like 4 times as long, and it's only text and the other ones are missing. So I hope I'm selling this to you, but it's really useful.
A little how-to summary here. That sounds pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it took me a while to get to this point, because there's a lot of steps manually that you would need to do if you don't have it automated. But hey, if you need the Apple script or whatever for your own system, I can hand that over. It's really fun to build these little tools. It's kind of it is effectively no code. Right? It's no coding in the original way, by just gluing tools together. The GNU way, the Linux way, by just using really basic tools and just intermingling them. But that is my process for communicating, and that has saved me a lot of time and actually made me quite some money, because I used the same tech for those videos, right? So just having all of this in place allows me to, I mean, I promised 15-minute videos and they turn out to be like 25 or 30 because as you could tell right now, I cannot stop talking for some reason. So whenever I'm excited about something or I have something else I want to say, I still
Yeah.
finish my initial thought and that might take me 10 minutes. So people tend to get like 20 to 30-minute videos even though they pay for 15. I think that's fine, I guess, but I just have a lot of fun and I learned a lot. I think I ran like 20 or 25 of these now, which
Hmm.
it's had been a lot of work just going through and talking through each of these things. But this week I'm gonna put a blog post out as my regular content, going through the three main things that I found.
Mm.
I'm trying to, I have some paid stuff that also surfaces information for my free stuff. It's all like kind of flywheel, which is my process. My process is to never do a thing if it doesn't also empower everything else that I do. And my
Mm.
structure is built in that way. I write, I record, I publish, and in publishing I get responses that empower me to write more, and during
Mhm.
recording interviews that I do, I get new ideas for writing and I get new like channels for publishing, and it's all kind of working together. If it's not synergetic, I'm not going to do it.
Hmm.
Yep.
It's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, sorry. That was one of those 15 minutes things that I do.
Didn't even cost me $100. I love it.
That's right. You get it for free. Yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun doing this kind of media stuff. I really, really enjoy it.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. I would definitely like to see a little more like behind the scenes about how you're actually executing on a lot of this stuff because I know it's quite complicated. I think just even getting like a good, audio visual setup and stuff like that was like a very big lift for me and I'm still only like maybe a B minus level. So
Oh, you're great.
yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to be done there.
Yeah, we're finishing the basement. I think I've mentioned this every single time, every single episode. People are
Yeah, this
probably going to be
basement.
super
Yeah.
bored with the basement, but that's where I want to live. I'm a basement dweller by design, right? Like come from the development community. We love our basements, and yeah,
Mm.
we're so close to getting it painted, and then I can get it set up and get my railing on the ceiling where my microphones and my lights and my camera are going to drop down from because I don't want things on the ground. I want them up, and it's going to be a whole studio, and I'm really looking forward to building this. And Danielle, being an audio engineer, she's going to help me like figure out the sound proofing and sound, the absorption panels and all the weird diffraction things that you need to put in a room to make it sound good. So it's just gonna be a fun little thing. And now I'm sitting in a different room, and I kind of want to go down there, but we're not done yet. I'm so excited for this whole process. I think for somebody who likes tools and toys, going into media is both incredibly fun and super expensive. You don't want to know how much money I spent on equipment that is mostly unused, but you never know if you might need it, right? Like I think I have like 6 or 7 camera lenses right here that may or may not be used in the future just because I want the shot a little bit tighter or a little bit wider.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to be prepared for something that will never happen. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to build this little business, but it certainly requires a lot of restraint because I could spend time on all of this all the time. But
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying, and I do wonder, that's one thing I wanted to ask you. Like, how do you keep yourself accountable to actually get things done? Because for me, that is having subscribers, having readers, having viewers, having people that expect me to deliver every Friday. So I have my structure in place to make it happen. But
Mhm.
how, as somebody who doesn't have that much structure, minus the I don't want to have meetings on Monday or Friday, how do you like set accountability goals and how do you reach them for yourself?
It's a good question. I mean, I have never been one to set kind of goals in the form of milestones, really. I often find that I focus more on the pace and the direction that I'm heading in. So
Hmm.
rather than sort of saying, okay, I want to get to, X 6 months from now or whatever, I tend to just sort of look at, okay, what kind of pace am I setting in terms of like, a typical week, a typical month, a typical quarter? Do I feel like I'm getting, enough done? And then I think about the direction, which is,
Hmm.
am I getting enough done? And is it the right kind of thing that's moving me in the right direction? And that's kind of how I focus on it, which is just to have like a retrospective. So if you can almost think of yourself as like a runner, right? It's just like you're looking down and kind of checking your watch, right? Getting your pacing, right? And saying like, okay, pace feels good. All right, like definitely headed in the right direction. Let's keep it up. Versus like, oh my God, I've got 3.5 more miles to go until I hit my
Right.
goal, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I know that works for a lot of other people, really like to set very structured goals, but the way my brain works is it's much more in that sense. So and then, I'll adjust, right? So very frequently it will say, hey, like actually, the pace is not what we want. Why is that? Oh, okay. Well, we had some distractions, we had some things that had to get changed, et cetera. Or, reevaluating the direction as well. Say, hey, got a
Mhm.
lot done, but seems to sort of be not quite headed in the right direction. So let's, recalibrate this week in terms of how I allocate time.
Mhm.
So that's usually how I do it, is kind of like course correcting over time on both of those counts. Yeah.
Interesting. So to me, there's kind of two camps here. There's probably more than this, but there's alignment, just what you were saying, right? Like people, where am I pointing the engine, right? And there are people like me who need motivation because the engine sometimes stutters, right? Like my alignment is, I think, fairly clear for me. I want to do what I like and I want to help people do what they like. That's the most general direction, and there are specific things in there as well, but I don't feel like I need to reprioritize. I found my stride, but I need to maintain the stride, and that is more the problem that I have than my alignment. So are you just like genetically somebody who just keeps moving forward, like that, the motivation and stuff? Are you a disciplined person? Do you consider yourself a very disciplined person?
I think not, but I think for me, oh man, how do I unpack this? Um,
Enjoy.
I think motivation for me comes in the form of, first of all, being a bit like what we were talking about with the kind of like, other people's narratives and things like that. Like
Mm.
continuously reminding myself that I am free of those narratives, that I could really be doing anything that I want, right? And I kind of remind myself of that a lot, like
Mhm.
really stepping back and saying, okay, technically I plan to do this over the next month because I have currently got this job and I've raised this fund and I have this obligation to these investors, et cetera, et cetera. But, just remember, like, you could change all this if you wanted, Tyler. Like, you could write a note to everybody saying, like, hey, I'm giving the money back. You could tell all your portfolio founders, like, you guys are great. You're on your own. I'm going to go be a tour guide in African safaris
Yeah.
because that's what I want to do now. And like, nobody
Yeah.
could stop me. Like, I could do that. So I
Yeah.
kind of remind myself of that. And then I basically like consciously re-opt in to what I'm doing. Right. So then I say, like, okay, I could totally go and do that. Do I want to do that, or do I want to keep doing this thing that I like? Is this actually like the most fun, important, interesting, all of the right adjectives thing that I could be working on right now? And most of the time I say yes. And some of the time I say no. And then I change what I'm doing.
Hmm. I love that.
So, and that's why I think like, I would say, I guess I've got maybe about 15-ish plus years as like a professional adult at this point. Like I'm 37, right? So you say maybe it's early 20s. I got
Yeah.
15 years. I've made some pretty big changes over that. It's not been 15 straight years of linear progression on the
Yeah.
same goal. And that's because like I am very willing to just say like, nope, I'm done with all this. I'm moving on to something else. And so that kind of continuous reminder of I could do something else, but actually like of all the possible things I want to be doing this, and I'm choosing to do this, is kind of where I get motivation to keep the pace up and keep pointing in the same direction, I guess, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
All makes
Um,
perfect sense to me. That's
yeah.
awesome.
I'm very wary of those traps as well. I think like there's all kinds of forms of like, the term like golden handcuffs, right? Like you get stuck in a job that just like pays you really well, and then you get like a really big mortgage because you have this job, and all of a sudden you're sort of like trapped in this situation where you have these golden handcuffs. Like life is pretty good, but you just can't really do something else. I tend to
Yeah.
like steer really clear of these like golden handcuff situations, or get like very suspicious of them, because I find that I like I need to remind myself that I could be doing anything else in order to feel
Mhm.
motivated about the thing that I'm doing, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing
Yeah.
that is very pleasantly absent from all of this reasoning that you just shared with me is money. Like that, I
Mm,
didn't hear a single word about like making money or building wealth, even though it's kind of
sure.
a layer, foundational layer of all of this, obviously, because
Yeah.
we have to still like build stuff, right? Build security or whatever it may be for ourselves or the people we love or just ourselves, right? It's just for
Sure.
ourselves to feel value, to feel valuable. That to me is what I hear, and not money, not the kind of financial thing. I kind of have to recur to what Paul was saying, Paul Millard again. He calls these people hoop jumpers, right? People who jump from hoop to hoop to hoop because that's the hoop
Mm,
that somebody else places there for you to go through the career on the
yeah.
default path, right? If you follow the regular progression, the narrative that other people put out there for you. And I think that's where the golden handcuffs come in, because every
Yeah.
time you jump through a hoop, you get elevated into another group, and that group has to kind of be maintained. So it gets constricted and restricted from the outside, and that's where the expensive lifestyle and all that comes from. Something that I also don't see in my priorities, but I think we both operate from a relatively, if not extremely privileged foundational layer, right? Having sold businesses, having
Sure.
financial security, if not stability, if not more than that, right? So I guess for us, it's easy not to talk about needing money because the necessity has just been mostly reduced to this is okay. It's okay to make more.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. But I live in a house that is very small in many ways compared to what other people live in. We only
Mhm.
have you will be surprised, two bathrooms in this house. Only two bathrooms because we're just two people. Why would we need more bathrooms? So that's kind of how I approach these kind of things.
Sure.
My priorities are equally, I think, or similarly to yours, in what do I enjoy the most. Like, what
Mm,
is the thing that I want to fill my time with the most? And that kind of, in a way, that is a highly structured approach. It just is not structured in the same sense that most processes or calendars are structured, right? Like if you kind of if you chase the thing you enjoy, you can't really schedule these things because that kind of makes you enjoy them less, but you can make room for them. And that's, I think, the one thing that, and I'm just gonna throw this out here, see what you think. Like, to me, um a kind of categorized but empty calendar is the best kind of thing. Like,
sure.
I want my 5 days. They each have a theme, but like, other than the theme, I don't want anything else in there. I want to be able to fill them as things happen.
Yeah.
Is that similar for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it just even I mean, I think it's basically yes, and a little bit even more emphatically, right? So that I
Mm-hmm.
don't even really choose the topic for the day.
Yeah.
It's more like my ideal day, and where I think, some of the clear, most important and impactful work, the sort of like 100x, days where like, and this is something I think that is, you and I have talked about in the past about how like there's certain kinds of careers, especially once you build a certain amount of leverage where, every hour, every day is not treated equally. And it's possible to have a single day's work that is 100 times more valuable than the
Mm-hmm.
average day's work. You write something, you make some connection, do something that, is just going to move the needle so dramatically.
Yeah.
And most of those, for me, most of those 100x days, or pieces of work have come from either a pretty blank calendar, or sometimes I get a hunch that it's coming on, and then I
Mm-hmm.
just clear the calendar. So, like, a good example would be maybe 2 years ago, I wrote this really long thesis for our fund. And the ideas sort of just started. I've been working on the ideas like on Twitter and in bits and pieces, sort of atomized versions of it. And I could just see it kind of all starting to come together. So it's again like early January, like the first weeks of January. And it was back in like post holiday work stuff. And I just said no. And I just nuked my calendar for a week. I told everybody like, leave me alone, like, and I just sat down and wrote that thing. And that was easily like 100 times more valuable
Yeah.
than, almost any other week, that I had put into that business so far. So yeah, it does typically come from that kind of situation, and it's tricky to think about that, to know that, and then to say, well, shoot, shouldn't like every single day and every single week look
Yeah.
like this? If like
Yeah.
that, like if I could have 600x days in a year, that would be like incredible, right?
See, that's why
How,
we don't optimize for these kind of things, because it just gets you into this incredibly self-defeating, I need to optimize state, where most
yeah,
of what you just said is about giving yourself the opportunity for serendipity, right?
yeah,
And that's something you just cannot optimize for, because by nature it is unoptimizable. It's unsummonable. You can't just summon serendipity. It falls or it doesn't. What you can be is prepared. I think that's what I see as the opportunity surface, right? You have as big a surface as possible for opportunities to strike, and then you have the capacity, the skills, and the judgment to see them as opportunities and go after them and
yeah,
actually implement them, or face them, or turn them into something. Because what do people say success is? When luck and skill meet each other, or something like that, is kind of, you if you want to take an opportunity, you have to recognize the opportunity, you have to be able to do something with the opportunity, and you have to just have time to even deal with it, right? And all of this requires, I think, a little bit less structure and more willingness to embrace it as it comes. I think that I'm similar. I have these days too, particularly my interview days with people
yeah,
like Patrick Campbell, right? That's the conversations like this. They will serve me forever as an anchor into his world, and
mm,
as a means for me to communicate that I'm serious about like teaching the community stuff that I find inspiring, right? Like, and that
yeah,
was an hour-long conversation, but probably one of the strongest ones I ever had. And it's
yeah,
a friendship. Like, I met Patrick at MicroConf in Denver. We
yeah.
had a real good chat, and now we're just like chatting back and forth. And this stuff just, it happens because there was this one day where I actually sent that Twitter DM and asked, right? And that was
Yeah,
probably one of the most high leverage things I ever did. It's just
yeah,
like asking people questions. So you're
sure.
100% right. To leave room for this. Well, we've been. I kind of want to pivot to the thing that this whole podcast is about, supposedly. 12 episodes in.
Yep.
Kind of want to pivot to the Calm MBA a little bit, because we've
Okay.
been having back and forth between a lot of structure, very little structure. I think we've now found kind of an initial schedule. I think that's what we called it for what the Calm MBA in its very first iteration is about. Do you maybe want to give a really, really concise, and I mean this not because you're verbose, but really short description of where we're at, and then maybe what else there is for us to decide before we actually get started?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, the entire idea, and in some ways the genesis of this podcast, was you and I talking about how, there is a need for more paving of the path of building a kind of bootstrapped business, calm company, et cetera. We were talking about, I think I was kind of contrasting it with, venture capital and the Silicon Valley approach is really not a fit for like almost every business, but they've done an amazing job of creating what feels like a sort of paved path. They said, hey, there's angels, and there's AngelList, and then there's accelerators, and then there's pre-seed and seed and Series A and all this kind of stuff. And they give you a sense that there's a path you can follow to build a company this way. And so that tends to lure quite a lot of companies, and in many cases, companies that probably should not go down that path, because like it's kind of one of the only paths that's really well paved and really articulated on how you can build these companies. And so the genesis of the idea of a Calm MBA was, let's start creating something for folks at the idea stage to convince them that there is at least one, if not many other alternative paths to build a company. We wanted to do that in the form of kind of exploring a variety of ideas around how to think about markets, how to build a company, how to think about hiring, like all the basic blocks of starting an early business, but through the lens of the outcome being build a calm company versus versus any other kind of company, really. And so we started this because we felt like we had a lot of raw material on the topic, and we really were not finding how exactly to get started with folks. There's a lot of interest from a lot of would-be entrepreneurs in terms of, consuming some of this, but we were like, should this be a cohort course? Should this be an accelerator? Should it be this, that, the other thing? And we said, let's just get on a regular call and work through this. Where I think we have landed recently is that the nature of trying to find a bundle of founders at exactly point A that want to go from point A to point B at any given time is incredibly difficult. You're going to have people who are idea stage, who are, a day away from quitting their job and super stoked, to people who are thinking about doing it 3 years from now, and getting those folks at exactly the right moment to put them in some kind of cohort or course or whatever is just too challenging, because it's just a coordination challenge. We might have, 100,000 people that are super interested, and only, 7 of them are all clustered at exactly the right point in that timeline. So what we've decided is to basically take each of the topics that we would do and just start creating the content around that in the form of either stuff that we're going to produce, interviews, etc., and not even necessarily doing it linearly from, point A to something in a later stage company, but just picking topics off and starting to create that. And then once we have much of that kind of catalog of material really organized, then we can start to apply it more to different things, like a cohort-based thing, like a course, like something like that. So that's kind of where we landed, in particular, the last episode. And I think where we are now, we were just talking before we started, which is like, I think we're ready to start.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think maybe we can just talk about, actually, in light of this discussion we've just had around sort of mix of spontaneity and kind of structure. How do you want to go about sort of starting to pick things off the to-do list and starting to create the content? What do you think?
It would be really nice to keep the whole building and public thing going here, and
Sure.
just making this something that our potential prospective audience has kind of a say in, right? Because for us, I guess it really doesn't matter if we start talking about pricing or funding or market. Like I can only speak for myself, but I have something to say about everything, right? It's kind of, I've thought about this stuff a lot. I have opinions about all parts, and so do you. Like, you've been involved in this so intensely. So it really doesn't matter where we start. I think it would be interesting with the people that we already got. You got the survey, and I have a couple people in my DMs. You probably have several in yours. Maybe we should really just talk to the couple of people that we've talked to, give them a list of like 3-4 different options for the, I don't know, first month that we would would talk about it once a week, as we probably would plan to, and just have them select the one that they care most about, and then kind of rank it by that, or make a list of 10 different things. Like, we have a list in our little document here, the module topics, the table of contents, right? Like, maybe just put that list in an actual either Twitter poll or a straw poll or something that can have more than 4 options, and have several people, if not everybody in our audience, vote about it. Because it doesn't really matter to us in which order we do it. Might just as well do it in an order that is attractive to the people who might want to consume it. That's my idea.
Okay.
Right? What do you think? Too open? Too public?
I think it's a good idea. I'm almost inclined to say let's divide and conquer on this topic, because my inclination is basically, I want to go through this list and pick what I'm like most excited about and start there.
Okay. Well, okay, go ahead. That's also fine. Yeah, we could do that too. Like, it's yeah. I mean, yeah, why not both? Tends to be the answer here. Like, pick a topic and we'll do it with the rest, or pick a couple topics. Yeah, that's also fine. To me, honestly, the question is like, when do we start kind of holding ourselves accountable? Which is why I brought up the whole accountability thing earlier, because I know that I could do a lot of things in a lot of different ways, but if I am a deadline kind of person. I need to know that by July 5th or whatever. Let me pull up my calendar. It's not to promise too much. I want to have the first thing ready to be put into whatever toolkit we choose for it to be made accessible, right? That is a whole other conversation that we are kind of and have been kind of having, but there are so many options that we just need to pick one. And we can always migrate it back and forth anyway if we ever make a choice. But let's just pick a date, because I mentioned my parents coming here mostly because during those next 10 days, starting on Monday next week, I guess, I will be completely inaccessible because I'm gonna be somebody's personal translator for the whole time.
Yeah,
so that's
sure.
It's just gonna make it 2 weeks that I won't be able to do anything. But beginning July, I could and would very likely really want to get started with this because, man, I really want to get this to a point in 2023 where this is an actual thing, right?
Yeah.
Like we've been pushing it so far. So what do you think of well, let's make it a Friday. It's always fun. Or do you think we should put like one of the first days in the first full week of July as our deadline for delivery of whatever that looks like, the first topic from the list?
Great.
For each of us?
Let's do it.
Friday the 7th. Okay, I'm gonna put that in my calendar. Yeah, because then both of us, you pick one, you mark it in a little document, and I mark mine in a little document, and we get going at it. I think that's a wonderful idea. I'm really looking forward to this.
Let's do that. I think we can chop it up in Notion. We basically can have the outline, and then we'll just have a sort of like running database of what we're actually going to work on and when. And we can just keep an eye on that, and we'll use that, and we'll just get going.
One day we're going to make that Notion document publicly available, and that's going to be fun. People can watch us work. I mean, that is super advanced building in public. Let's not necessarily start with that. Let's get into, a certain kind of regular cadence here, but I think that would be fun to watch. Like, I bet people listening to this would be, like, they'd be glued to the Notion document just to see, like, how much time do we really spend on this? Like, do we really do a lot of work, or is it just like us typing whenever? Yeah, that would be interesting to watch. I think, the 7th is a good date. I think the 7th of the 7th month in the third year of the decade. Yeah, that's cool.
Rock and roll.
I'm very much looking forward to this. And now that that's settled, there's really not much more we can discuss. Isn't it kind of sad? Like, we had so much fun not doing the work and just talking about doing the work, that now we actually have to do it. Oh man.
Let's do the work. Yeah. No, it'll be great. I'm excited.
All right. Do you have anything you want to share, like, before we end this here episode that is now officially an hour long? Any shout outs? Because I might have one.
You go.
I do. Okay. So there was this thing, I kind of wanted to mention it in the beginning, but apparently Danny Postma, one of the very public indie hackers, like I think frenemy of Peter Levels, like they both built effectively AI products and stuff. He had something happen yesterday where I think you could notice like how upset he was about it. Like, somebody effectively cloned his business, the whole photo, or not photo AI, but like AI headshots kind of thing that he has. And somebody cloned it to the letter, like with the copy on the landing page and everything, and then started a Twitter thread about how they are running an experiment cloning somebody's product, and hopefully Danny wouldn't be pissed, and then kind of involved him in the conversation. It was really bad. It was somebody burning their reputation. 2 people from Austria, I think, building this product and building their reputation in our community forever, or burning it forever by just like outright cloning a product, and then kind of in the most cringest of moves, publicly speaking about it on Twitter, inviting the person they cloned the product from. So what I want to give him a shout out for is I had a little like private conversation with him around it during the process. He was really mad at it, because why wouldn't you be? You build these things and somebody just kind of swipes it and tries to make money off of your work effectively. He got mad, and he kind of pointed out what a shitty move that was, and wrote his own tweet. And then half an hour later after that happened, Danny like deleted all of his interaction with those people. And I was thinking, this is a Calm founder. He was a bit aggravated for a couple minutes, but then he said, hey, why should this bother me, right? Why should I even give them the attention that they are seeking by making this a public thing? So he removed all of his amplification, all of his interaction with these people, and now they were sitting there like getting like 3 likes on their little Twitter post of their clone. Well, Danny could finally focus back on building the things that he's actually good at building. So big shout out to Danny Postma for being, slightly angry in the beginning, but then calming down again and doing the things that really matter, which is doing the work that we're good at, and not complaining or getting aggravated about other people trying to steal our stuff, which people always try to do anyway. So that was something that I found. If you want to be a Calm founder, take that as an example. Like, calmness is about staying calm when shit hits the fan, right? That's kind of what it is. And that's a good example that I think is worth a little shout out.
I like that a lot. Yeah, awesome. That's a great share, and we should definitely put on our list for a future discussion to discuss copycats, because that's something we've seen a lot in our portfolio and talked to a lot of founders about, and it is a very tricky topic that I'd love to talk through, but way too big of a topic to tack on right now. Cool.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. That may also be a thing where we want to have a guest and interview somebody else who's been dealing with this a lot, like a person that I may have mentioned just now, right? Like we can talk to a lot of founders that are dealing with this on a regular basis due to their public exposure of their work and their personality. So yeah, that is a big topic, and probably something that a lot of founders want to know about from the start, right?
Yeah.
In our very public sphere, this might be a big deal, but another topic for another day. Thank you so much for spending this hour with me, having a nice little chat and doing more planning and a big exchange about structured and unstructured approaches. That was a lot of fun. Looking forward to talking to you again. Not sure if I'm going to hit next week or even the week after, because, you know, I might be speaking German the whole time, and that would be pretty weird for a podcast like this. But July is definitely when I'll be back in full swing working on our stuff together.
Have fun with the family.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
You too.